Hello everyone again, especially to all the inside people who are sheltering in place, trying to stay safe from this COVID-19 pandemic. Some headlines that I'm watching today. Already in the eastern part of the United States, we're seeing some hospitals sounding the alarm that they could be overwhelmed, that they're already feeling the stress. Now, how can that be? How could it be that hospitals already are concerned about being overwhelmed in places like New York, which is a wealthy city and has advanced medical care? It seems strange. Most of us, if you go outside or look out the window even, we're not seeing people collapsing from the virus. We're not seeing, many of us don't even know someone who has COVID-19. So how can it be that hospitals are already concerned about being overwhelmed? Well, a top epidemiologist I spoke to in this country, I'm in the UK right now, and maybe for some time to come, he said that it has to do with the nature of COVID-19. That's why there's so much stress on medical systems. And it is because 95% of people who get infected, we're not even talking about the people who don't get infected, 95% of those who do get infected don't need medical care. They don't have to go to the hospital. They get a little sick, they get a little more sick, but not sick enough that they have to be hospitalized. But the 5% who do need to be hospitalized need quite high-level care, and that a full third of them, a third of the 5% who need to be hospitalized need to be put on ventilators and other levels of ICU, intensive care unit treatment. And that's where the stress comes, because it's not easy to scale up an ICU. You can't just put more beds in the hallway and suddenly have a new intensive care unit. These are complicated spaces that need a lot of time and money to set up. So while you can scale them up over time, you can't really rapidly expand them out. That's one thing that I'm watching. Here in the UK, a big headline is that finally, after being criticized for dragging its feet, the government here closed the bars and restaurants overnight. Closed the pubs, I should say, because there is a big difference. People in the US think of, or might think of, if they haven't spent time here, as a pub just as a British version of a bar. And they're actually quite different. The pubs here are more like extensions of people's living rooms. They're family places. There's a pub down the street that I liked to go to and hopefully will go to again. And I've watched babies learn to walk in the pub. There are crayons on the table. It is a family atmosphere. And that's why the closing of the pubs here had such a social impact, because they are part of society. They where people go with their whole family on Sunday to have a roast and to get together. And people are, if you look in the editorials in the newspapers here, people are saying these are the biggest social controls that have been put in place in the UK since the war. Biggest peacetime controls they've ever had. So it's becoming more real here after the British government took these efforts to limit social life. While that's getting a lot of attention, however, I think perhaps the most important thing that's come out of the UK recently was a statement by the chief science advisor to the British government, a man named Sir Patrick Vallance. And he said that, it's hard to call it a good estimate because it's a terrible estimate, but if the social distancing and the suppression efforts work, that the UK could have 20,000 COVID-19 deaths. Sounds like a horrible number, and it is a horrible number, but where did he come up with that? Well, he said, and excuse the graphic again, he said that in the UK, about 8,000 people die from what we normally call the seasonal flu every year, and to come up with the 20,000 best estimate number, because the number if people did nothing and there were no societal controls would be a lot higher. He said to get to the 20,000 number, it assumes that this COVID-19 is 2.5 times as deadly as the seasonal flu. Now, can you extrapolate those numbers to other countries? That number that he came up with, this 2.5 times, sort of made my ears perk up, and I was wondering, well, what happens if you apply that to numbers in the United States, for example? And I'm not saying this is going to happen. It's a simple extrapolation of the math used by the chief science advisor here in the UK. If you apply it to numbers in the U.S., the estimates range greatly about how many people die from the seasonal flu every year, but they all go from 12,000 to about 60,000. So if you take the low estimate, 12,000 brings you to 30,000 deaths in the United States, and the higher number, 60,000, brings you to 150,000 Americans dying in the United States, according to the numbers that were put out by the chief science advisor here in the UK. 150,000 people. That is a small American city disappearing. So this is a very serious problem. Even if we're not seeing people collapsing on the streets, hospitals are already concerned, and people should be certainly aware and taking precautions. And we can probably have to be taking these precautions until one of three things happen. There is either really, really accurate testing, because that would allow people to allow societies to have more targeted quarantines, because right now everyone is assumed to be guilty, everyone is assumed to be a potential carrier, so they have these blanket shelter-in-place orders that are being rolled out in different parts of the world. If you have very precise, easy, fast testing, then you can go back, according to scientists I've been speaking to more traditional gumshoe type of contact tracing. You figure out who's sick and who they were in contact with and where they sat and which bus they took, and you can quarantine just people who are potentially infected or who are infected. That would help a great deal. Obviously, a vaccine that would be an enormous breakthrough, or in the meantime, some sort of treatment, some sort of combination of drugs that suppresses the symptoms of the virus, that suppresses its effect, so that not as many people have to be hospitalized, or that those who are hospitalized aren't as serious and don't need as high-level care. But until one or all of those three things happen, we're all going to have to be careful. So with that, stay healthy, and we will stay in touch.